Welcome back to the channel, Retro Freaks. Today we want to look into the crystal ball. We want to see what we think is going to happen with Nintendo's next console. There's a lot of scuttle right now.
Yes.
When is the Switch 2, which is what everyone is calling it? Is that what it's going to be called? More importantly, this thing could fail. I'm looking at recent history. The Wii U, after the success of the Wii, boom.
Yeah, and the Switch is Nintendo's best-selling console by a ton.
Yeah.
And I think if they release it as a Switch 2, that's obviously bad branding, and they should have learned that from the Wii, because the Wii U.
Yeah.
People are going to be confused by that. And I think if they make it too similar to the Switch, casual consumers aren't going to understand that it's a different console. It's just going to... So they have to make it different enough, but then it's going to be tough. And I think if they don't shoot for the moon, but if they do shoot for the moon, though, that could fail too.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing, dude.
It is, yeah. That's why I thought it would be really fun to talk about. And Nintendo's got such a lengthy history that we can maybe somewhat predict what we think is going to happen.
History repeats itself.
I love what you said about if they go with that generic name of the Switch 2 or whatever. The Wii U, I don't think the average consumer knew that it was something else.
Yeah.
Or it was like, oh, well, I can do most of what I want to do on my Wii. It wasn't engaging enough. Hardcore people, of course, knew that it was a new system.
And it was really cool because the Wii U was backwards compatible and could play your Wii games.
Yeah.
So if you did get a Wii U, which I love the Wii is awesome, it basically was having a Wii and then a new console.
Yeah.
So if the Switch 2 comes out and it can play Switch games, I think that'd be really awesome, but then you're going to lose a lot of people, because then it's like, well, I can just keep playing my Switch, or like, is it different enough? I think they got to like rebrand it entirely. We loosely were talking about calling it like the Super Nintendo Switch. That'd be kind of fun. That would be really cool.
So that is the best idea that I think we have ever came up with of what I think could work. The numbering thing, it's hard to say that it won't work for Nintendo, because it does work for Sony.
Yes.
Sony.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But they've been doing that consistently.
What has seemed to work for Nintendo is you had the Nintendo Entertainment System, then you had the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and then it kind of just goes down from there as far as sales go.
Yes.
Now, more competition was coming in all fairness, but the Nintendo 64, the Nintendo GameCube, and it wasn't until the Wii that things went back up kind of through the moon.
It is wild when you look at the sales of Nintendo stuff, especially Gen 6, the Nintendo GameCube, which is like so nostalgic. People, it's going crazy in prices in 2024. If you look at the sales of that console did terrible.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people played it because everyone was buying the Xbox, which is phenomenal.
Well,
the PS2, and then so like Nintendo was going downhill. Then they released the Wii with motion, and then all of a sudden they were freaking above everything, and then Sony and Microsoft were like, oh, we got to do motion now. So then they took over, but then the console after that freaking failed.
Well,
so
it's crazy that so many people call the Wii U a failure, and it literally sold 7 or 8 million units less than the GameCube.
Yeah, the GameCube and the Wii U are really close.
And they don't think of the GameCube as a failure.
No, but dude, the GameCube sales are wild to look at.
See, I think the nostalgia factor, I think there's a lot of things that Nintendo could do with this next iteration. The hybrid thing seems to be the way to go.
Yeah.
They're into this Nintendo Switch Online with all the retro games being available.
Which is really cool.
And I'm not saying you have to placate to the old dogs like us, right? But what if they called it the Super Nintendo Switch, and in North America, they had the gray and purple colorway of the North American Super Nintendo. And in Europe and Japan, they had the PAL colors for the Super Nintendo over there and the Super Famicom over in Japan.
That'd be so cool.
And the Joy-Cons, were kind of syncopated with that. And I don't know, just an idea. It seems like it worked pretty well. You didn't have to really reinvent the wheel with the Super Nintendo. It was very similar to the original Nintendo.
Yeah, they just made it better.
Yes.
They just enhanced it.
I don't know if that,
But also in this current market, if you just enhance the Switch, they've already released the OLED Switch.
Yeah.
They've already released the Switch Lite and all this stuff. So how much enhancing can they really do but make it different enough?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking. Like, they gotta really make it different. And my initial thought was like, well, the Wii U, it was 2 screens. That was phenomenal, but it didn't do well. So is now the time to bring back 2 screens? but then that's hardware issues, and that could fail again. I think it would be really cool though if they brought back 2 screens, because then they could play DS games and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You could have a little cartridge for it.
Well, and you do got that pocket of kids now that's probably starting to get pretty nostalgic for their DS games.
I feel like I would really like to see them try to do that, but also I don't know if now is the time to do it.
Yeah.
I think if they do it again, it might fail again, and that would suck because it would be failure, Switch, failure.
Yeah.
And I don't think they want to have a failure sandwich.
Yeah.
That'd be bad. But I think like down the line, especially like because 2 screens, that's tough for developers to develop for especially
sure.
if you're doing. If you're a game company and you're developing for Xbox and PlayStation as well, and then you're like, I gotta make this one 2 screens for Nintendo.
Well, and Nintendo's notorious for doing that to developers, and that's where some of their third-party support has been lacking, if you will. When you wanted to make something for the Wii, now I gotta ram jam motion controls in there just to be on Nintendo's console.
It is tough too because they've been releasing so many amazing games and awesome things for the Switch that like if they release a new console, they gotta have really cool launch titles for it.
Yeah.
But they already have 2 amazing Zelda games. And it's like, if you release a Zelda game to launch with a new one, I feel like it's got to be way different than Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. You can't release a third similar game. Even though the games are amazing, it would be like, well, I haven't got around to playing Breath of the Wild yet. I can play that. Or Tears, or you'd have to do something way different. Or like a new Mario game, but you have to make it different enough than the ones that came out on the Switch, like Odyssey, or the new one. That one was really fun. So you gotta do some difference there, you know?
Yeah, well, and I'm pretty sure the initial wave of sales for Tears lagged behind Breath of the Wild because a lot of sequels do that.
Yes.
But another thing that comes to mind when we talk about all of this is there's still buzz and excitement around stuff that is going on with the Switch. Is it time to get out of this? Every so many years, we have to have a new console. Does Nintendo even need a new console right now?
Well, that's a great question.
And I think a big part of what hurt the Wii U, yes, the branding and marketing, I'm not disagreeing of where you talked about those things, but I also think it might have been timing.
Yeah.
People weren't done with their Wii yet. They were still having so much fun. They weren't sitting there thinking, man, I want another Nintendo console. Maybe a couple years later, would the Wii U have done better?
It might have, yeah.
And like right now, it just doesn't feel like people are chomping at the bit for a new Nintendo console.
The tough part is, until you release a new console, you gotta keep supporting the console that is out.
Yeah.
So you gotta keep releasing these exclusive games and these awesome, and Nintendo's so good at their exclusives.
Yeah, and
there's amazing games. But like, if you're gonna keep releasing though, then people are gonna be excited for a new console.
Yeah.
Because Nintendo has never been about the hardware. They've always been about the software.
Yeah.
And it's not like, oh, we're gonna get the new Switch and it's gonna be 8K and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Nintendo doesn't do that. Nintendo introduced HDMI with the Wii U.
Yeah.
Like they don't care about all that stuff. So the power won't be there. So it's tough because it's like, do you quit producing games for the Switch for a while so then people get hyped for the next console? But then that would hurt the sales of the Switch, even though the sales of the Switch are doing incredible. It's a tough thing.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, when the Switch came out, most of the games they released initially were Wii U games.
Yeah.
So when they do release the next console, do they release Switch games, but it's like the remastered HD versions? But they've already been doing that with their old stuff for the Switch.
Is the new one backwards compatible? Does the new one even play physical games? I think the answer will be yes on both of those things.
I hope so.
I think Nintendo's going to do the right thing there. But yeah, it's fascinating to talk about. I don't know the answers. Nobody does. It just does feel like it might not quite be time. Like we may need to wait another year. There's some really cool things coming down the pipe. A lot of the games that are being announced at Nintendo Directs and stuff don't really need a ton of power. They can run just fine on the Switch.
And
I don't know.
And the Switch is so active with all their online stuff, all the retro games. Like freaking Mario Kart 8, that game initially came out on the Wii U. That game is still alive and fresh because of all the DLC and stuff like that.
Yep.
And you spend all this money and you're building all this stuff. So then when the new one comes out, how do you make a better Mario Kart?
Yeah.
Because every console has a Mario Kart. How do you make a better Smash Bros? Smash Bros Ultimate is my favorite Smash Bros. And that has so many, like, how do you make it better? How do you make it?
That's the tough part.
That's what you have to do. How do you make the Mario parties better? Because they've released Mario parties where it's nostalgic old maps and stuff like that, and that's awesome. How do you take the step and make it better and make it worth it for people to upgrade.
Yeah.
That's the scary part.
And I know a lot of people out there are thinking Metroid Prime 4 is going to be the launch title for the Switch 2, or we're going to call the working title Switch 2. That's what everybody's calling it online. Though you think that's cool, I think that's cool, you think that's cool. That is a very poor launch title. Metroid Prime is awesome. Metroid Prime 4 probably will be awesome. But Metroid is not a system seller for most people. It is not a Mario. It is not a Zelda.
Yeah.
It's more of a niche type of thing.
Metroid is not a game that casual gamers will go out and play. Zelda, people were buying Switches to play Zelda because all of your coworkers were talking about, have you played Tears of the Kingdom?
Yeah.
People are buying Mario because it's a household name.
Yep.
And Mario Kart, like, it's all this stuff, but Metroid is for die-hard gamers, so, like, we'd be super excited, but the casual people wouldn't. They got to think about so many things.
I don't know. It feels like if Metroid Prime 4 is a launch title, there's got to be like a Odyssey 2.
Yep.
Or something else to come with it to really, really knock things out of the park. But then, do you make versions that also play on the Switch, which maybe negate the need to get a Switch 2? I don't know. Something just feels to me, I hate to predict this because I do not want this to happen, but something feels to me like we're not ready for the Switch 2. Something feels to me like it's going to get pushed out, and something feels to me like I'm not going to say going to fail, that it's not going to do what the Nintendo Switch did, which is, that's already a tough hill to climb. It's the greatest selling Nintendo console of all time, but I think it may be a little bit of a step back. Now, if Sony and Microsoft keep fucking around, maybe they'll just dominate and Nintendo will be back on top no matter what.
Yeah, because Sony and Microsoft are doing weird things now. But it is tough. I think Nintendo should maybe just hold the ball and just wait because the Switch is doing so well. Let it keep doing well. And people are going crazy on the internet, but they've been going crazy on the internet for what, 1.5, 2 years about the next Switch? Let them go crazy. So then by the time you do announce, maybe wait 2 more years.
Build the hype,
but then make it good.
Yeah.
Don't half-ass it. Don't release it because you think you should release it. Wait till the market says release it. And then it will come out strong. It's hard to tell. Yeah. I hope it does well because I love Nintendo, but also I don't have a reason to get the next one because I love my Switch.
We'll see what happens. My vote is call it the Super Nintendo Switch. I think that's your vote.
Yeah.
Do the colorways regionally how it was back in the Super Nintendo day, and I think people will gobble it up. Maybe make the cartridges, I don't know,
little gummy bears,
like little rectangular, but they go in the opposite way that the Switch one. I don't know. Who knows?
I don't know.
I'm losing my mind. But just a little Nintendo discussion. What do you think is going to happen with the next Nintendo console? What do you think it's going to be named?
Ooh.
How do you think it's going to do on the market as far as sales figures and things like that? Is it going to fail? What do you think? Let us know in the comments section below. We always appreciate you tuning in. Subscribe to the channel. We will catch you on the next episode of the one and only Gaming Off the Grid. Yeah.